Good evening, everyone. My name is Megan Moore, and I'm going to be teaching you about vaudeville today. First of all, I will apologize. I am very, very sick, so if I start coughing, please forgive me. Also, the reason I am not filming myself actually as a teacher in front of a class is because I am so sick. I can't be around other people right now. I am contagious with strep throat. So if you all will forgive me for that, we will get right in here. And I'll teach you everything that I know about vaudeville. So vaudeville is one of my personal favorite times in the history of theater. It is quite, I guess, more of a memory now, but there are still people who do that comedic routine that vaudeville is kind of known for. I did put a quote here. In vaudeville, there's always something for everybody, just as in every state and city, in every country and town. In our democratic country, there is opportunity for everybody, a chance for all. So what is vaudeville? Well, the actual definition of vaudeville is a theatrical number or a theatrical entertainment consisting of a number of individual performances, acts, or mixed numbers, as by comedians, singers, dancers, acrobats, and magicians. It does say compare variety, so it really is kind of just a variety show. Basically, it is a number of shows playing in a specific order. Usually, I think they did the most boring ones first and last, which I don't know why you wouldn't just build up and do the most entertaining at the very end, but they did not. It kind of kept you entertained through the whole thing. You never knew what to expect next. So vaudeville originated in the 20th century, and like I said, consisted of such acts such as comedy, burlesque, song, and dance. It was variety acts, and these did come from its French predecessor, the Vaudeville, and the person who is given credit with actually making vaudeville a thing and making it respectable as a thing is Tony Pastor, a ballad and minstrel singer, and we will talk about minstrel shows a little bit because they are kind of one of the things that led up to vaudeville becoming what it was. Here's some pictures that I found of vaudeville posters. I think these are so cool because they really show the type of shows that they were. You can see how the variety of the posters, and they kind of compare a lot of them to circuses, which P.T. Barnum was alive during this time period. He was in his older years, but not necessarily all circuses, but really just comedic acts, song and dance, and they were all kind of put together into one show. So things that were happening during this time. Between 1880 and 1930, approximately 28 million immigrants entered the United States. This is a very important thing to notate when it does come to what was going on in the world, because without all of these all of these immigrants entering the United States, we would have had a lot less culture, a lot less things happening. Especially in New York, which is where a lot of them did enter, and a lot of them made their homes. In 1891, Carnegie Hall opened in New York City. 1898 is when we went to war with Spain. 1920, obviously the Roaring Twenties, a very important part of what vaudeville was and what it became. You had a surging economy, you had mass consumerism, jazz age flappers, prohibition was happening during this time. These are all important things that were covered kind of in the variety acts. These are some of the themes that were important to people during this time period. And then obviously the 1930s, the Great Depression hit, and it did contribute to the rapid decline of vaudeville. After World War II, it was virtually impossible to find a vaudeville show, and that's simply because radio and television became much more important than coming and seeing kind of a variety act. You could see it on television instead. So how did vaudeville actually affect history? It was not free from the prejudice of the times, of course, but it was kind of the earliest form of entertainment that kind of crossed those boundaries of racial and class. And for many, seeing a vaudeville show was kind of the first exposure they ever had to the cultures of people living right down the street. And I think that's very important to notate, because without that kind of without this kind of show, people wouldn't know about each other. They wouldn't know about each other's cultures. And if only there were more things like that now that kept people from having racism, kept things from happening like that. And then you had things like silent movies, with former vaudevillians, of course, Burt Williams, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, and they kind of brought that animated physical comedy that vaudeville already had into the silent movies and later into regular movies, and this is kind of what led to movies and musical theater. So, and you go to the origins of vaudeville. One of the biggest origins that vaudeville came from was obviously the minstrel show that Tony Pastor was involved with. The minstrel show was mostly presented by white performers who were in blackface, which is when they painted their faces completely black. It honestly is very derogatory and looks very ridiculous and is obviously a little bit racist, but it is important to notate that because it was kind of a black show, an African-American show, it did use African-derived music. So they had the banjo as well as African dance patterns, and the coon show, which eventually led to ragtime, which eventually would lead to jazz. So even though the show is kind of a little racist and also just a little bit over-exaggerated, it did lead to important things in the world, which jazz is a very important thing to a lot of people. So it kind of was the creation of those things. Burlesque, which now we think of as the striptease, but burlesque was just basically a satiric comic show, and they were kind of racist and a little bawdy. It did eventually lead to what we know as the striptease, which became kind of what burlesque was by the 1930s, but before that, it was really just a show that was satiric and comic. And another type of show that vaudeville involved and was originated from was the musical comedy. This type of entertainment is composed with a play or narrative story. This is kind of the one that led to musical theater becoming a thing that came from vaudeville. It did come from like opera and operetta. It had sentimentality, and it had a lot of stock characters. But this is basically the one that made musical theater come about. An important playwright to note for this era is George Kelly. He wrote most of his sketches himself. He had his first success with a satire that he wrote, The Torchbearers, and then The Show Off, which was made 3 times as a film. Oops, sorry, I went backwards there. Important actors to note of this time. Abbott and Costello. They are hilarious. So before I talk about them a little bit, I'm going to pull up this video and let you see for yourself how funny they are.
Hey, wait a minute. You owe me back room rent. 13 weeks at $7 a week.
Tidy sum, isn't it? Pardon me just a minute.
Sure.
Lou. Here's $28. $28? Shh. Give him that old routine of ours, 7 into 28, 13 times.
Oh, hey, give me the Crayola.
Oh, yeah. Here. And do it right this time.
Hope it works.
Make it snappy.
Okay. Mr. Landlord. Yeah?
What are you smoking, an army blanket?
Never mind about that. You owe me room rent.
All right, here's $28.
$28, fine. Just a minute. You owe me 13 weeks at $7 a week, and that happens to be a lot more than $28.
Well, that comes to $28.
Did you go to school?
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you can prove that 7 times 13 is 28?
Well, it's gotta be. Certainly it is, because Mr. Rabbit and I, that's $28. That's what you get.
If you can prove it, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will give you the room rent for nothing.
You will?
But if you don't prove it, you owe me double the back rent. Is it a deal?
That's a deal.
Okay.
You happen to have any Crayola on there?
Crayola?
Never mind. I got it.
Oh, you have?
I got the Crayola. 7 into 28 is gonna come out 13.
That's your way.
That's my way, and it's gotta come out right. Now, first, I put down a 7.
Right?
Now, I'm gonna divide the 7 into 28.
Yeah.
I put a 28 there.
Okay.
Isn't that cute? Now, here we go. 7 into 2. 7 will not go into 2.
It will not.
That's a very big 7 to push into that little bit of 2.
So it is.
We ain't gonna hurt that little 2, are we?
Of course you will.
So we take the 2, open your hand,
Yes.
and I put that 2 right there for safekeeping. But don't drop it and don't lose it. Now, 7 into 8.
Once.
Once, I put the 1 over here, 1 over there. Now, we're gonna carry the 7 because it's very big and it's getting heavy on my shoulders, and I'm gonna drop the 7 under there. Now, 7 from 8
Is 1.
is 1. I put the 1 down there. Now it comes. Would you mind opening up your palm of your hand, please? Or would you like to use that 2? Open it up. Give me that 2. You've had it long enough. I'm gonna put that 2 right there. Now, 7 into 21.
3 times.
That's right. 7 into 28. 13. Good enough?
Wait a minute. You have to prove this even better than that. You can prove it very easily by multiplication.
You mean you want me to multiply it?
No, not multiply, multiply.
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 All right. Multiply it.
7 times 13 is prove
28.
it. Go ahead.
Now, first, we got to put down a 13, right?
Right.
There's a 13.
Times 7.
Times 7.
Right.
7 weeks times 13, right? 7 times 3.
21.
21. 7 times 1.
7.
7. 7 and 1.
8.
And 2 to carry. And a hand.